Eleanor Roosevelt is quoted as having said that small minds talk about people, normal minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. I think this episode summarizes that quite well. Garry Lee is my guest today from Optimum College. Garry and I actually connected through TikTok, a platform that I don't do a lot on, but we have been sharing a lot more on that platform recently. Gary's got a large following over on TikTok, and he's got his own university, Optimum College, that he created specifically to teach the things around critical thinking, physics, the theory of everything, quantum, singularity, AI, a lot of the topics, I would say, the things that you're not hearing about in school, but the things that are changing and affecting our world every single day. Garry and I connected on commenting on each other's content. I was following him. He was following me. We began having direct messages and talking more about the ideas that we were sharing. And I invited him to come on the show. I wish we could have got this episode out sooner, but a lot of times we have a backlog of a month or so in the content that we've been producing. So this was recorded about a month and a half ago. We talk a lot about AI. We talk a lot about Optimum College. We talk about the theory of everything. We talk about ideas, not people, not events, but ideas. We don't talk about companies. We talk about ideas. And I think that's such an important thing to be doing right now. Expanding your mind, stretching your mind, thinking more and more and more about ideas that are changing and will be changing the world. Garry does a great job of explaining a lot of his ideas in this episode. And one of the things I love about having conversations with highly intelligent people that are critical thinkers is that we don't always have to agree. I think that's the coolest part about interviewing somebody like Garry. I say that's similar with folks like Praveer Malik or Mike Harushka or Des Rock. I don't always agree with everything that they say, but I'm listening, I'm understanding, I want to gain their perspective, and I want to shift my perspective by hearing what they have to say, what they're thinking deeply about. The mind is a very powerful tool. It has an incredible amount of processing power. And I love talking to people that have thought long and hard about an idea and what makes that idea, what forms that idea, the effects that idea has on society, and how that idea has the ability to change you. Here we go. Garry Lee on The Convergence with Derrick Maines. Welcome back to another edition of The Convergence. I'm excited to have my TikTok friend,
yes,
Garry Lee from Optimum College with me. We have literally been communicating via TikToks. I follow you, you follow me. We started realizing that we had this sort of jam flow together. And I was like, you got to come on the show. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. When I first started liking your videos on TikTok and we got in touch about this show, and we were like, yeah, let's do the show. I went and looked into you, and I had no idea what a boss you are. I just saw the clips on TikTok.
I always point over here.
Hey,
there you go. I always point over there to the Emmy. I'm
read your book, Adaptagility, last night, the whole thing.
Thank you. That's great. Well, thank you so much for the compliment. I mean, I think it's always difficult in making content because it's always hard to know how well it hits, right? And I think it's great when you start to hear, and this is very similar to AI Daddy, who's been on the show. You know, we followed each other, and then we happened to meet each other at a cocktail party, and we were like, oh, we should connect. And then we're like, looking, oh shit, we already listen to each other. You know, it's sort of cool how that works. And I think there's not a lot of people doing thought leadership when it comes to technology, AI, education, these kind of topics. And I think it's very, very difficult to be one of those people that are critical of some of those things. And I think it's important for people to understand when we talk about things like education and we're being critical, we're not being critical of the people. We're being critical of the model. And we're saying, does this really still work? anymore? And if it doesn't, are we willing to throw it away? I think that sunk cost fallacy that so many people get hung up in, where it's like, yeah, but we've spent so much money on these buildings. Yeah, but if it doesn't do anything, I mean, shouldn't we like quantify the evidence?
We were talking about Socrates, how the model hasn't really changed since Socrates. And of course, Socrates, Plato was inspired by Socrates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
And so I would argue, as would many other people, that Plato was really the founder of modern academics. He founded the first academy.
Yeah.
And I think Plato actually had the right idea. So this idea of we need to, it hasn't changed. I think Plato actually had the right idea. Get together a group of colleagues, just spitball, brainstorm, have a think tank. And then over time, it kind of turned into something else where it was much more authoritarian, much more like you sit in a desk, you listen. And the idea with Optimum College is to go back more to what Plato had in mind, which is the idea of a community of colleagues. Optimum College is a community of colleagues. It's not a college in the way many people think of it to be. It's more of a platonic kind of academic institute.
I really like that. And it's funny because anybody that knows me knows that I'm a big connector of people. And last night was one of my fireside chats in the backyard. It started at 5:30, about 11 o'clock. It ended up, and I invited a couple philosopher friends, and all of the people that were there, I would say, are somewhat thinkers. And what I find interesting is this: in that setting, there are times where I do most of the talking. There's times where I don't talk at all. Right. One of our most talkative members last night, he even texted me this morning. He's like, bro, I was so blown away by the conversation. I didn't want to contribute because I didn't want to blow. I was like waiting to see what would happen next. Right.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, last night was really interesting. We were talking about this concept of tools. Right. And the humans are able to extend their self beyond themselves. And the example that I'll give there is like a hammer, right? When you have a hammer in your hand, you figure out very quickly exactly where it hits. When you have a rake, you can reach out and you can pull things towards you, and you can like hit it at the same time. You ever drive in a car and you're like backing into a parking space? You can sort of feel it. Like you feel, especially it's a car Oh
yeah, we are becoming cyborgs. This here,
right.
This is like an extension of the brain. Elon has talked a lot about that.
I talk about this all the time. I'm like, this is a tool. So what we talked about last night, and this idea was instigated by Abigail Thorne, who recently transitioned. She's been a philosopher. She has Philosophy Tube on YouTube, and it is I literally pray at the altar of Abigail Thorne. I mean, she's an amazing philosopher. But one of the things that she said, it's really incredible. One of the things that she said is talking about tools. She said, look, we all understand tools, and we all understand how we can extend ourselves, and we see education as tools, and we see things as tools. She's like, what if ideas could be tools? What if there's an idea big enough that you could leverage the whole world with it?
Oh yeah. Well, it all starts with that. Whoa, it all starts with the mental model.
It does. And I think that's the coolest part to think about. When we think about tools, we're thinking about extending our person into something else and extending our reach. But ideas can do that as well. And I think it goes back to your point on Plato. I'm a big fan as well because I love the fireside chat approach that Plato took to learning. And I think it was that same thing. Sometimes you came with the idea. Sometimes everybody else came with the idea, and you just sat back and said,
exactly,
a glass of wine. This is pretty good. Like, let me see where this shit goes, right?
It's like, go to a college and tell the professor he's wrong and see where that gets you. But at Optimum College, I say, you can tell me I'm wrong. I want to be wrong because that means I want to be wrong because that means we have an opportunity to improve our models. Steel sharpens steel. Come here, debate with me. That's okay. You never have to agree at Optimum College. That's one of the big differentiators between what we.
That's so good. And I think that's what philosophy really is. And unfortunately, philosophy is not taught as widely and as broadly as I believe it should be. I mean, it is an elective, right? For most people. Most people don't ever really experience true philosophy in their lives and think about paradigms and paradoxes and all of these different things, these thought experiments you can get into. Last night we did an exercise with Pascal's mugging, right? And we started talking about this old idea with Pascal. And then it was interesting because once we sort of came to a resolution, somebody else was like, well, we should look up what else Pascal did. And then we did, and we were like,
Pascal's
shit,
wager.
Pascal's wager. Like we were like, oh shit, like now we get it. Like it's all interconnected, right? But you have to have and I think going back to that tool analogy, right? When you have that type of setup where you have smart people sitting down together and talking about these things, everyone else's mind becomes a tool as well. And I think that is really a powerful thing, because sometimes, and we have this rule in this group that I do, where we'll say, look, we can put out an idea that we don't actually believe in ourselves, but we'll argue that point. Yeah, we'll argue that point and let other people. And so sometimes we'll throw out really crazy ideas just to see where it leads us. And oddly enough, sometimes I'm against them, and then I'm arguing it. I'm like, wow, this guy makes a great point
to it. Yeah.
Isn't that funny how that works? So tell me a little bit about how did you get what's the origin story here? How did you start this idea?
Sure.
Did you come from academia, or are you?
I graduated with a degree in business administration. I graduated in 2008, Great Recession. And all the while I'm going through college, I'm thinking, I'm not really feeling this. I'm not really this doesn't feel right. But I felt a kind of social obligation and obligation to my parents, and they didn't force me to do this stuff, but it felt like an obligation. So I finished college, 2008, and not trusting my instincts, I was punished by the universe because the Great Recession hit. So now my business degree is not as valuable. And so I couldn't find a job that really justified all the time I'd spent on the degree. So I went into substitute teaching until I could plan my next move. My very first day as a substitute, I was hired full-time because a certified teacher had retired. So they gave me an emergency certification. I became a full-time teacher from January to the end of the school year. Very first day. So I'm like, I'm okay at this. I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
So I go and get a certification. I become a certified teacher, a real, teacher. And the next year, I get a job as an applied STEM teacher. It was called Career and Technical Education. By the end of that year, I was promoted to be in charge of the curriculum for all 11 schools under this public charter. It was called PepTech. So it was technology. It was a public charter. They were trying some new ideas involving technology. So I was in charge of the curriculum on a state level, working with the superintendent of public instruction for the state of Arizona. And all the while I'm thinking, college isn't advancing fast enough to meet our rapidly changing world. Because I'm supposed to be preparing these students for the future. And college wasn't keeping pace with the rapid changes going on in the world, especially with automation, technology, AI. Anyway, I took a little break from teaching. I left on phenomenal terms. I've got great letters of recommendation, but I decided to start my own business. I founded a manufacturing company, sports equipment, which I still own to this day, and it's done really well. I've sold equipment to sometimes the word gets blanked out because of trademarks and stuff, but national champion football coaches. Okay. If you can, the word
you can imagine that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I sold to guys who are household names. So if I said the names, I can say it, right? Andy Reid has purchased my equipment, and then he won two national championships after purchasing this equipment.
That's amazing.
Anyway, so COVID happens, lockdowns happen, business is like, nope, you can't even play sports, right? It's illegal to play sports. And so I'm in lockdown, and I decided to go back to my educational roots and found Optimum College, an online community of colleagues dedicated to producing graduates who are prepared for the future as efficiently and affordably as possible with the most advanced and intuitive mental framework as possible so they can be successful, happy, healthy, and knowledgeable and not be left behind by a rapidly changing world. We have only one course. It's called the Optimum Theory of Everything. And we are the first to simulate the four forces of physics from one equation, which is pretty remarkable in my opinion. Of course, I am biased. I founded the college.
Right. When you found it and it's your theory, you're a little biased to it. I love the fact that you use the word framework, because I do think part of the challenge with public instruction and the education system that we've built and that has come from the roots of Plato is that a lot of it is memorization and a lot of it is test taking and a lot of it is
and you can cheat
things that you're
GPT
never
on those now. They just cheat with
absolutely.
GPT. We don't do any of that. We don't do tests or any of that at Optimum College.
And I think that's really good, because what you want students, the true thing that you want a student to be able to do is to think critically and to start down a pathway of learning that never ends. And graduation is not the graduation is not the end. And I think too many times, and listen, let's be honest, and I know there's a lot of executives that listen to this show. If you think about students that come out of school, they've learned to take tests, they've got really focused on grades, they've done all these kind of things. That supposedly sets you up for the real world. But we don't do any of those things in the real world. You're going to be a cog. But on top of that, we don't do any of those things. Like you would think, if I'm training you to be a participant in society, I should train you how to do it the way society does it, versus, oh no, we're going to have ranks and scores and tests, and you're going to have to do this. And I mean, I think it should be more about understanding deadlines and timelines and working against those and coming up with your own novel ideas from extrapolation and all of this kind of stuff that just isn't taught. And I think it's really unfortunate when and having been an entrepreneur many times and owning a couple businesses, it's sometimes really disheartening when you hire somebody young and you're like, wow, I just can't believe how little they know. Oh, dude, I'd rather hire somebody 2 years in McDonald's, right?
So many people graduate with like a comp sci degree. They go to work and they're like, everything I learned was like 10 years, 20 years out of date. Yeah. The idea at Optimum College, by the way, there's a lot of great colleges out there. I don't mean to knock all of college. Yeah. There's a lot of great colleges out there. But the idea with Optimum College is it's project-based. So it's a two-part process to graduate. You have to have understanding and ability. So we've got this curriculum, the Optimum Theory of Everything. Students have to understand that curriculum. They never have to agree with it. In fact, they can argue against it. And if they make really great points, we can even change the curriculum. So they have to understand the Optimum Theory of Everything, which, true to the name, it covers everything. But it's condensed in a mental framework that you can carry in your brain. And it's like an operating system for the mind. And it's about efficiency. It's about understanding things efficiently, so you can work quickly. And then they have to complete a project. We call it an Optimum project, and it is something that is chosen by the member of Optimum College. It can be anything. It can be a work of engineering. It can be a book. It can be they can decide to start a podcast. It can even be an outstanding athletic achievement. The thing is that Elon Musk and other business leaders, they've gone on record saying, we don't even care. Elon in particular has given a talk where he said, I don't even care about your degree. I care about your proof of outstanding ability. You have to have, that's all I care about. Like if someone if someone comes up to Elon and says, I never even graduated college. I never graduated college. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't graduate from college.
I didn't graduate from college. I didn't go to college. Yeah. I didn't even know it was a thing. I mean,
I can make you I can make you an honorary optimist. I've done it for quite a few people.
Yo, I love that. I mean, it's really true. I do think that, and listen, I think there is a breakdown, in this country too. And I talk about this. I have a couple of videos coming out, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but I went to private Christian education most of my life. My parents were ministers. I never met anybody that went to college other than my teachers until I was probably in my mid-20s. I honestly, and I confessed this in another video that's coming out really soon, I did not know how to write till I was in my mid-30s. I turned 50 next month. I could read at a remedial level, but well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the plug. You got a little out of focus.
I've gone a little blurry, but go on. We'll figure it out.
That's okay.
Keep talking. There we go.
Yeah, but I think with me, I wasn't exposed to those opportunities. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I think when you come from a background where faith is the forefront of everything, you have this reliance and belief that you're not in control of anything, and therefore you hand off your power and control to an invisible third party, and you say, well, if it's whatever will be, que sera, sera. If God leads me and guides me there, then that's all well and good.
It can take away personal agency.
Yeah, it's total bullshit though, right? Because
not always,
right. But you're right. It doesn't always. With me, it did. It removed the personal agency from it, and it made it so that I lived my life believing that things would happen to me because, instead of actually saying things will happen because I did this, and I missed out on a lot of that. And so I'm really intrigued by this whole idea of Optimum College. I've been on staff at universities, and many times they don't like me because I don't have a degree. I tell a story about a major university that
credentialism.
They tried to recruit me to be an executive director of a college, and literally recruited me and like had me out there and did the whole thing, and then said, "Well, we can't hire you because you don't have a degree."
Yeah, it's a guild.
You recruited
the intellectual
me.
class has become, and it's a plague upon all of the sciences at the moment. If you ask me, it's a kind of guild. It's a kind of credentialism. Oh, you can't speak unless you have this degree, unless you have a doctorate. You're not allowed to talk. It doesn't matter if Darwin had a degree in theology. He wasn't even a scientist, and yet evolution is like one of the most powerful ideas in human history.
Sure.
It just goes on and on.
Well, and I think
Benjamin Franklin never graduated elementary school. America's first scientist, Franklin, never graduated elementary school.
And I think it's a real shame that it's become that, but it is an elitism. And again, I have professor friends that are listening to this, and they'll get a little perturbed with me. But I think there is a level of elitism, and it's protectionism, right? Where you don't want anybody else to come up through that system, because them coming up through that system and being a success proves that they didn't need to go the standard traditional way. My hope is, though, that I think a lot of that's changing because of AI. I'm a firm believer in sort of transhumanism, and I think at some point, people get upset. They say we're not we're transhuman right here. Right here is transhumanism.
Upload,
it's going to happen.
All that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, right now we hold it to isn't it funny? The distance between true transhumanism and what we have today is about 1 millimeter between the speaker and your ear, right? I mean, that's how close we are to it.
The wild thing is when people talk about, ChatGPT isn't conscious. Maybe it's not, but they'll say something like, all it does is predict. Well, here's a book, How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker. Great book.
Yeah, great book. Yeah.
And I read this, 20 years ago. And he describes the mind as a prediction engine. Same with Ray Kurzweil. That's how the mind works. It's a kind of prediction engine.
There are no cavemen that created cell phones, right? Because they couldn't extrapolate. Everything is extrapolation. I said this in another episode.
Correct.
All ChatGPT is doing exactly what we do. We just extrapolate on other people's ideas.
There's no idea, no new ideas.
No,
it's just a steady optimization of what came before.
Yeah. And what I think is interesting, and many times we don't give credit where it's due. I mentioned Abigail Thorne here earlier. A lot of my ideas recently are coming from Abigail Thorne. Now, it's interesting when I go back and listen to Abigail, what she says, I'm like, I took a little different turn on it. But my idea came from her, but she's a philosopher. So she's like, her idea came from this, and that idea came from that. I don't, the real smart guy is the first idea.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Jolie Artist. Who's you gave Abigail Thorne, Jolie Artist. She doesn't use her full name on the internet. I know her full name, but she doesn't have I'll send you a link to her. She's a friend of mine. She's been a guest speaker at Optimum College. She's a philosopher. Oh, so good. Good. You would love her. She loves all this transhumanist stuff and philosophy.
Yeah, I'd love to chat with her. I love this idea of, how do we do this? I know there's a lot of executives that listen to this too. And you can take that back a step and call it, augmented organizations, right? How do we augment your organization and automate, outsource, abbreviate, eliminate processes via something like ChatGPT or an AI agent or those kind of things? Yeah. But the reality is, if we look at the progression, there will be a very clear progression. These items are getting closer and closer and closer to inside of our head.
It'll be, right? Elon wants to put it in our brain.
Neuralink. Yeah. So I think it's coming. I do believe that it is like I said about cavemen not coming up, no caveman made a VCR, right? So the reality is this generation will have resistance because we've gone this far. We've gone from it being connected to a wall to it being connected to our head. That's a big jump. The next jump is very, very small, but it's still it's like that black and white, right? That line in our mind where we're like, I'm separate from this. No, you're not. This is a tool. You're extending your reach with it.
Once the technology is available and people are laying on their deathbeds, I think there will be a significant percentage of people who, if given the opportunity to try this new technology that could maybe make you live forever, I think a significant percentage of people will go for it.
You're right. I think we talked about this recently at a group of people that I do some chats with, and we were talking about what is eternal life. And if you think about eternal life from the spiritual perspective, it's one thing, but we actually have the ability right now to provide eternal life to anyone, right? The words that we're speaking now.
Yes. I saw your clip about how your internet blueprint, you could extrapolate from that, recreate.
You could recreate this whole thing. I mean, right now we're implanting, we've found ways to save information in the DNA of trees. Technically we can do some pretty wild stuff, right? We can technically put that drop of your,
I don't doubt you.
Your spark, you could put that into a tree and that tree dies and it goes into the soil and it comes back up as something else and it turns into.
I've seen those burials. Right? Actually, those are really cool.
Yeah, they are really cool. So I think there's a lot there. I think it is the fact that most people aren't great at critical thinking. They accept, what they hear as they accept the hearsay. They don't truly get into the depths of understanding why. I have a number of friends that are in PR and marketing, and sometimes we'll be talking about the news and they'll say, you do understand that's a plant, right? Like that's like not real. Like they're setting that up for something else, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm like,
this is extremely dangerous to our democracy. Have you seen that clip?
Right? Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? Where all the news anchors on cue.
We talked about that last night. Are saying the same thing.
Is extremely dangerous. And they're all reading the same script.
Exactly.
Think about it critically. How is letting people talk to each other like we are doing now this is kind of an extension of social media, what we're doing, we met on TikTok. How is this the danger to our democracy? How is free thought, it's like...
Because I will tell you why.
It's Orwellian. It's Orwell.
Eleanor Roosevelt said it though, right? Yeah. Small people talk about people, right? Small minds talk about people. Normal minds talk about events. Great minds talk about ideas. And ideas, going back to that first point when we started talking, there are ideas big enough that you could leverage the entire planet. And Absolutely. I don't think many people truly understand that. I'm going to throw out a little something here. There's a guy to look into, William MacAskill. I don't know if you're familiar, but William MacAskill is a Scottish philosopher. Many people believe he holds a lever so large right now that he is moving the world. He has created a movement called effective altruism that Elon Musk, Bill Gates, every billionaire in the world is a firm believer in effective altruism. And it's a really, when you read about it and you look into it, you go, this is a really good idea. But this is a guy. Well, effective altruism essentially says that if we think about the value of human life, and let's say I have $500 that I can donate, do I donate that $500 locally where I can affect one person, or is it more moral for me to donate it someplace in Africa where I can help 500 people? And so weighing these things out, and a lot of times empathy is problematic for human beings because empathy is a localized thing, right? And there's a great book against empathy that talks about this. The other one is Toxic Charity, that talks about how as long as we have Sarah McLachlan music playing in the background, we can manipulate you to do pretty much anything we want, right? And we try to localize things because we want people to understand that small use case. And there's a great example in Against Empathy where he talks about people on like a kidney transplant list, and they tell you the story of one girl who's somewhere on that list, and then they ask you where you would put her on the list, and most people say I would make her number one, and then they explain
about her.
Yeah. And then they explain, you do realize you just killed somebody. You actually just killed somebody, right? Because the list is the list for a reason. And your empathy to this one little girl is all well and good. And yes, it does feel inside of you that that's a good thing, but actually someone dies.
Science.
Yes,
science.
So, and that's what I like about AI, because AI, as long as we can keep it from feelings and emotions and we can make it just quantitative, it can help us make decisions that we cannot make on our own. Right. We can't make that decision around healthcare for the 92-year-old who has terminal cancer. We can't do that ourselves. So we need quantitative measurement. So going back to effective altruism, essentially what McCaskill and some others like Toby Ord, another philosopher, say is that we're better off investing in the 500. The future of humanity is better if I help the 500 than if I help the one. Now, if that's true, then I should take my money and I should always use it towards the thing that has the most impact. And the most impact possible is not on planet Earth today. It's the future. Because if I can fix something like climate change, I don't affect the 7 billion people on this planet. I affect the 100 billion people that would be born over the next 10,000 years.
That's why what Elon is doing is so noble. And seeing him turn into like a villain of the left has been really bizarre, because he says some things that are kind of libertarian on like Twitter, but fundamentally these are liberal and
very much classically liberal policies in a lot of sense.
And ideas of like, it's so funny that the same people who were saying someone needs to do something about climate change, Elon steps up to the plate, arguably has done more for the green revolution than anybody, and now he's the villain of those people. I just don't.
Let me tell you why, Gary. And my background is sustainability. I worked in corporate sustainability for 6 years. I've consulted for the biggest companies in the world on this matter of sustainability, and I got to tell you that I know lots of sustainability people. I know the people that are on the front of the magazines and all those kind of things, and many of them, like me personally, they don't like my opinions on many things because I play a little mind trick with them. I throw them into a paradox. And I did it about 1.5 years ago at a dinner with some hardcore environmentalist friends. And I said to them, hey, have you guys heard the news? This Israeli company has found a solution to climate change. They have built a machine that literally will pull carbon from the atmosphere, and it solves everything. And we can now pollute unlimitedly. We can do whatever we want. Yeah, we can screw the whole everything, right?
Was this not a real company?
No. and they were furious.
Really?
Furious that somebody had solved this problem. And they were upset and they were like, how dare they?
I made a video about the solution to climate change a while ago. And the solution is kind of, you just pump the CO2 underwater. Like you do
the natural process.
Water filters CO2 naturally. You could just pump it up and you could have these algae farms. The solutions are there.
But the point is they and it's a thought experiment. And then I stopped them and said, this was a thought experiment. I really want you to think about what your feelings were when I told you that the problem is solved and your industry was over. Right. And we were with another.
Renewable energy is a good idea anyway, though.
Sure it is. Right. It is a great idea. But when I couldn't force people by the threat of death anymore, all of a sudden, right, it was like, I lost the teeth of the dog were removed. Yeah. And it's funny because I was with another a very, very well-known executive director for a large animal welfare organization. And he said, I will tell you he's retired now. He said, in the 30 plus years I was in animal welfare, I will tell you that nobody wants to solve the problems of animal welfare. And the reason is because to do so means they would lose their jobs.
They would lose their who are you going to donate to? The scariest thing is if you think, do they really want to solve cancer? That's when it gets really scary.
Totally. And I think, unless you can come up with a vaccine that's, $1,500 a dose, then you can probably do that. But I think it is interesting. I think we have to look at our motives and we have to understand our biases. And this is a deep topic.
And it's not, I get in this trap and my friend Anastasia says, it's not it's us. We're all part of the system. So
right. You can't point fingers. My grandmother used to say, you can't point a finger
they don't want it. No, it's us. We are part of the system. We can affect change. We can do it.
And that's part of, it's part of the reason that I wrote the book Adaptagility, and I'm going to do another iteration of it with a couple more chapters, because what I need people to understand is that the way that you're responding to the world around you is evolutionary, and it's happened over the course of a few 100,000 years, going back millions of years. These things are evolutionary to you, and you have to step into the prefrontal cortex. You have to stop responding with your limbic brain, because your limbic brain only really cares about a couple things, right? And it is truly the survival of your DNA. Even to that point, we are not.
I loved when you were writing about this, how you're incorporating biology and science into business practice. I love that.
Yeah. Well, because we are biological beings.
Yeah.
So I think the big mistake is not doing that, right? It's like we have to understand there is a process that has occurred in our universe that has got us to where we are. And the biases that we have, even if we don't know them consciously, subconsciously, they have been there helping us survive for hundreds of thousands of years, and they're pretty damn good at it. So we have to be conscious of those things.
And we're the rider on the elephant.
We are the rider on the elephant, right? We have to say to ourselves, we have the reins. The elephant goes where we tell it to go. Now, I understand sometimes that's a fight, and you have to pull, and you have to convince that elephant. We have a dog that's like this, right? My wife says, after 10 billion good boys, he finally has achieved good boy status. It's 6 years later, right? We had to keep working that through for a very long period of time. And
was it you get him from a shelter?
Yeah, we did. And
he thought he was a bad boy.
Yeah, well, he was a puppy, but he was a puppy, so he didn't know too much. But he just was he liked to eat bottles of melatonin and eat shoes and drag hoses into the house when we were gone. And but he's actually now really attained enlightenment, I guess we could say, and he's now a really good boy. But all of those good boys that we said along the line were technically lies, right? We were conditioning him with lies of the truth that we wanted for him and we knew he could potentially achieve, until one day he actually said, you know what? I am a good boy. Like, okay, I'm legit, right?
We manifested it into
reality. Manifested it, yeah. And I think that is a really, it's a critical piece for us, particularly at this element of our evolution, because let's be honest, change is constant now. And
it's
that
always. It's never going away. There's no end game. I talk about this a lot at Optimum College. The game will never end. You can't say, oh, finally I'll get to this point and it'll all be over. No, it's going to keep going forever.
Gary,
change.
Today is the slowest that change will ever be into the future.
Yes.
Today's the slowest.
You're probably right.
Right? It's the slowest.
We are the knee in the curve.
Yes.
I think we're in singularity right now. I think when we look back, we will say, oh, they were in it.
That's a really good point. I wonder that too.
It's this curve and the pace of, the idea is the advances are happening so fast right now. Every day I check the tech news and I'm like, what? Now they've got video, text to video. Yep. And,
well, the brainwave one was just 2 days ago, where they're connecting it.
Exactly.
ChatGPT is able to take the brainwaves and turn them into words.
Exponential.
It's crazy.
Exponential.
Yeah.
I don't even think the government can stop it, because even if the government said, "Hey, we're going to ban all this technology," they would be using it, and it would continue. And
you think the Chinese would stop? The Chinese, who are right on our tails,
right?
And the Chinese have this advantage. One of the guests a few weeks ago said, what people don't understand in America is the Chinese have a strategic advantage over us. And that is that there is no illusion of privacy. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, as an American, you have an illusion of privacy. But I'm going to tell you something. For about $25, I can go into the deepest data lakes of the internet, and I can find what you put on your Sears charge on March 13th, 1987, when your mom bought you G.I. Joes on her Sears credit card. Yeah, he's like, it's an illusion of privacy. And he said that truly we won't be able to fight the Chinese until we give up the illusion, till we actually say, you know what, we're fine with the fact that everything we do is tracked and monitored. And he's like, because it already is. He's like, think about it. I mean, he explained to me about going to Google Timeline. You can go to Google Timeline, pick any date in the last 10 years. It'll tell you exactly where you were, what locations you were, how far you drove, how fast you... I'm like,
imagine all that, because when we think of ChatGPT, we're like, oh, it was trained on Wikipedia. imagine a chatgpt trained on locational data, search everything anyone has ever typed, searched for, their current locations. That's some
Well,
military industrial
it's an
complex kind of
optimization.
stuff, but
Yeah, and I think it's a good point too. I think what
yeah,
AI will give us is a level of optimization of our society that we would never have anticipated at any time
yeah.
before in our history. Because my full-time job is the process fixer. I go into companies and help them optimize processes.
Are you
And
still
so many
with
times.
Fat Rides?
No, actually, Fat, I left about a year and a half ago, and
Yeah.
almost 2 years ago now, and started
You
back
won an
my consulting.
Emmy.
I
I'm
won a
so
freaking
happy
Emmy for
for you.
that. I
That's
know that was
phenomenal.
so. Now I feel like I've got to try to get the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony too. So I
Go for
gotta,
it.
I'm going to work on that. But I just was talking to somebody this morning, and he's like, "Hey, come to this dinner with us. The guy from Hamilton's going to be. He's my guest there." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come hang out with him. Maybe I can work on a Tony that way." So I think he's the guy that's like George Washington or
that
something.
show was great. You were the producer of that show.
Yeah, so I started and produced in it and actually created it. And the interesting thing about that story is, and this goes to show, I love that transition because a lot of people don't know the origin story of Riding Fat. The day that in 2020, March 17th, the night that the NBA canceled the season, I had a cocktail party. It was a big one, about 180 executives there. And I was standing there with the GM of the Arizona Cardinals, some Diamondbacks managers, and a television producer that I knew. And they all got the text message at the same time because they were all in that loop of like the higher ups in professional sports. And they all went, uh-oh, right? And I'm like, what? And they said, the NBA just canceled the season. This changes everything. So they all start, their phones are getting blown up, right, by their owners. And they're like, what's going to happen with the combine and the draft and like all these questions. And I just said, hey guys, let's just stop for a second. I said, what is the opportunity that just appeared that will never appear again in human history? Like, what is that single opportunity that happened right now? And fortunately, Kelly Salloway was standing beside me. Kelly's been a producer for Motor Trend. She's got one of the top shows on Discovery Channel right now. And she says, well, Hollywood will follow suit and they'll shut down tomorrow. And she said, what people don't understand about the throughput pipeline of content in Hollywood is that it is a machine that runs 24/7, 365 to produce content 6-8 months in advance. And she said, a gap of even 2 weeks could literally mean your favorite programs aren't coming back this fall. She's like, it could screw up everything. So I said,
it's
what
like
would
when
you
see
Yeah. So I said,
when you see this, have you ever seen that like a video of a car braking on the freeway and then it creates
everything? Yeah.
Effect?
Right.
Yeah.
Because she's like, all of this is going to back up. Right. So I said, well, what's the opportunity? She said, if you were ever going to pitch a reality show, you have to pitch it in the next 2 weeks. And I said, okay, great. How would you do that? And she said, you have to produce a sizzle reel. And I said, okay, how would you do that? And she said, you'd have to get a camera crew. And I said, okay, when would you do that? And she's like, I don't know. Everybody just got laid off. She's like, because I guarantee you tomorrow morning. So I said, well, how soon could you do it? And she said, I mean, we could do it tomorrow. Like I could get a crew here tomorrow. I'm like, great. What time? 8 o'clock? She was like, yeah. So we did it. And it's out there someplace. There's this little pilot episode.
Boss. What's that? Do your listeners know that you did this?
Yeah, I think
produced
so.
the show.
I think so. I mean, I've probably dropped it a couple times. Yeah, I always leave it sitting right there, so hopefully they figured it out. But the interesting thing is all because of that moment of saying, what is the opportunity? And listen, within 2 weeks, we had a sizzle reel out there. We were talking to all the major networks. They were all working at home, right? But we were able to go out and pitch the show and get calls that would have usually taken you 2 years to get. We were able to get those calls in a couple of weeks because we were the only ones pitching a show. Only ones on the planet that were out there going, hey, we have this new concept. And they're going, wait, what? Do you guys not hear about COVID? Right?
Yeah, so I really admire that.
Yeah, we took advantage of that. And I got to say that there's certain ways about engineering the world around you. My producer, Kelly, was brilliant with what she did with the Emmy. She saw that there was a new category called long-form branded content. We knew that eventually that would be what is called podcasting. And nobody was applying to it because it was some obscure category that was, there's the top 500s and then there's like these way ones at the bottom for the best lighting in a production done outdoors, so she's just like, I'm just going to go after the ones that are the new ones. Yeah. And got us three nominations. And we thought, my God, that's the greatest thing ever. We don't even need to win one. We got 3 nominations.
Book, Adaptagility. You weren't just talking. You weren't just BSing. You are that guy. You
Yeah,
saw the
absolutely.
opportunity and you went for it.
And
You saw the change happening.
And I think some of that, Gary, goes back to education in the sense that I didn't have what I call the disadvantage of that type of education, right? So many times I ask questions, and even on this show, I've had people tell me, they're like, you ask questions sometimes that they're just not in line with the way that the scientific theory works. And I'm like, but that's the reason they're engaging, is because I don't know any better. I don't know how you get a show. I don't know how you win an Emmy. So I'm just like, my great friend, Christy Siefkin, who's been a news anchor for many, many years. She's been nominated, I think 15 times, for an Emmy. And she was over the other day and I was like, hey, do you want to like touch it? And she's like, you are such a jerk. She's like, how does a guy first time out of the gate,
Yes.
But again, we had to understand the system. And I think that's what we're talking a lot about here. And I think in starting to bring this, around, thinking about the system. And I'm advising a lot of clients right now on AI, and I'm saying to them, look, you don't need to make a move just yet. The move you should be making is creating the use cases inside your organization for when the time comes and things settle out. Your people have already thought this through. You understand the implications. You understand the resources. You have a drawer that you can open up and say, today is the day we're going to revolutionize our business, and bring it out and start to implement it. You can start to test things. If you've got 30 people in your call center, don't put all 30 of them using ChatGPT. Put one of them and measure their results. I always have my favorite tool in the whole world. I talked about tools. This is the most powerful tool in the universe, a stopwatch. Because when I watch somebody time, right, and I say, well, it took Gary 18 seconds to do that, but Joan does it in 11. Let's move Joan over to that role, and then let's let Joan train Gary, and let's gain that 7 seconds.
Just incremental improvements,
exactly. Just that continuous improvement cycle, and trying to think in that methodology of how do I make things better, and then when things do go a little bit sideways, the sky is falling. Well, if the sky is falling, what's the opportunity, right? Can I put out buckets and collect pieces of the sky and sell them once the sky goes back tomorrow?
Yeah, the tools available to us right now are so powerful. Like I said, we were the first to simulate the 4 forces of physics from one equation. And
tell me more about that too. When you get a chance, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, so it's something I've been interested in since I was a kid. I've got on my bookshelf, The Universe in a Nutshell from Stephen Hawking. And he talks about the theory of everything. It's something I've always been interested in. And the idea was, how can we simulate the universe? Forget the blackboards, because that's what they were doing. Like, why is there this crisis in cosmology? Because they're stuck with all this bureaucracy and like what we did in the past. Oh, we have chalk on a blackboard. Forget all that stuff. Start from first principles. If we want to simulate the universe, how would we do it? Well, we need a 4-dimensional grid space, like a grid, like an Excel spreadsheet, but in 3 dimensions. And then every point on this grid would have some kind of value to represent energy matter. Energy and matter are convertible. So fundamentally, all that really exists in the universe is this grid space, time, which is, you could think of as the speed of causality, the calculation speed of the universe, c, the speed of light, speed of causality, and then this energy matter. So you can put a real number on every point of this grid to represent a snapshot in time. Now we can get into like consciousness and how is our brain like observing all this number universe, this mathematical quantifiable universe. That comes a little bit later down this whole chain of thought. Sure. But then, so once you've got this idea of, okay, the universe is fundamentally just a 4-dimensional grid with number values at every point between negative infinity and positive infinity. We live in a real number universe. It's not an absolute number universe. It doesn't start at 0. It goes into negatives. So negative infinity to positive infinity. You've got negative particles, positive particles, matter, antimatter, black holes, suns. And then how do these numbers interact with each other? Well, we know the universe is conservative. It conserves energy matter. So these numbers can't be adding with each other locally. We live in a local universe as well. Things only affect things that they touch, and then it happens in a ripple effect.
Well, that was the
going
Nobel
outward.
Prize in physics last year, right? That was that whole idea.
There's some
reality is local.
Yeah. So we live in a local universe, and people will play all kinds of semantic games and stuff, but fundamentally we live in a local universe. And so how do these numbers interact with each other? They can't be adding, because then you'd be adding energy matter. They can't be subtracting, you'd be subtracting energy matter. They can't be multiplying, because multiplication is just another form of addition. But division, if you have one apple and you divide it into 4 apples, how many apples do you have? 1, but it's in 4 parts. So the idea was that every cell, it's called a von Neumann neighborhood, when you've got these cells that touch and they operate on each other. This happens on something called a cellular automaton, which is it's a mathematical structure. Okay, that sounds complex. It's actually a very easy idea when you visualize it. So these numbers are averaging with each other. They're adding and then dividing by their local density, their space-time density. So the equation is conserving the sum total of energy matter. It turns out when you do that, and you can do this on, I did it in Excel for the first time, because Excel is just a matrix calculator.
Sure.
So it turns out that when you put a bunch of numbers in an Excel spreadsheet or any kind of grid space, and you let them average simultaneously and locally with each other, it emergently produces waveforms and simulated particles that attract, repulse, have Coulomb barriers. Like I said, I'm biased. Because I discovered this theory and everything. But I sincerely believe 100,000 years from now, this will be something very significant. There's something very significant here.
Yeah. I don't know if you had a chance yet to listen to the episode that dropped last week with Pravir Malik. But
I did. It was great.
Yeah. Very interesting, because there's a similar thread in there, right? He believes that all information is only located at the quantum level, and that actually it's even moving deeper. Away from that. Yeah. I think you're right. Even deeper, right? That is
fractal, like you were saying. You said in the episode, fractal.
Yeah, it's about the fractal.
Absolutely. I believe this universe is essentially a fractal. You can zoom in forever.
And I wonder too, there's a huge movement, as we all probably know, and nobody likes to admit, but there is a huge psychedelic movement that has been going on among executives. And, between DMT and psilocybin and, certain types of dosage of marijuana. And one of the interesting things is the first experience that you have is a fractal experience. Yes. That is what the psychedelic experience is. And it wasn't until somebody pointed that out to me that when under the influence of these type of things, the first thing that you get, the first knowledge that you have that you're entering into that psychedelic state is when you close your eyes and you literally start to see fractals and everything starts to break down and divide. And it's like, it's real. Well, listen, there's a weird story out right now. I'm gonna say it's probably pseudoscience. There's a weird story about a DMT researcher that is claiming that if you look at a red laser while using DMT, you will literally just see numbers streaming. There's no color or anything. It just looks like there's numbers streaming across.
I think he probably did see that, but I think what's going on with DMT is it's just leveraging the dream state that we already have within us. The brain is such a powerful computer, and this goes to show how far we still have to go with technology. That the brain. I lucid dream. Have you ever lucid dreamed?
I have not, and I need to learn how to do it, because people.
I made a video about how to do it.
I'm going to check it out for sure. Yeah, I will definitely do that.
And I like to experiment when I lucid dream. I go around, I pick things up, I touch things. It's photoreal. It is photoreal full dive VR and full sensory. This is a simulation. The brain, this 5 pounds of jello that we call a brain, can produce photoreal, real-time simulations that are more powerful than a rack of supercomputers. Yes. This goes to show how far we have to go before we start to touch what evolution has evolved for us. We got a ways to go.
We do. And I think this is why, so many people are even starting to refer back to like the legend of Prometheus and saying, maybe, I'm getting a little Joe Rogan here, but maybe there was some sort of, outside force that helped us get here, because it does seem like a pretty quantum leap from single
let
cell
me talk.
to and 4
Let me talk
billion
about that.
years. Yeah.
Understood. And a cell is insanely
Yeah.
complex. The interior of a cell is more complex than any machine we've ever made.
Yeah.
Just one single cell.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did at Optimum College is we took the first principles from this unified equation, and it takes a lot of computer power to run our unified equation. But we can extrapolate the first principles, which is that what this equation showed us was that the fundamental particle interaction is attraction and repulsion. Okay, so let's make a more simplified, less compute intensive simulation of just little particles that attract and repulse. And let's see what happens. They self-optimize into cell-like structures. They turn into little cells. They attract. It happens through a process of it's called emergent complexity. And some of them even reproduce. They divide into copies of themselves. Yeah.
So the natural resting state of math is cellular. I mean, is that a little bit of too much of a summary? The natural resting state of mathematics.
The term cellular automaton, yes, but the term cellular automaton comes from, I believe it was John von Neumann, and who came up with this. I could be corrected on that. But the idea is cellular is it's comprised of cells, little squares, and it has to be that way because of our limitations of computation. No one has built an infinite computer, and to my understanding, we never will. So eventually, it has to break down into little squares. So that is a cell, and then automata, which is the plural. Automaton is a single cellular automata. Yeah. And automata just means self-acting. Once you push play, it just starts to run on its own. Now, the universe is theoretically an infinite computer. It's like the perfect Turing machine. It's the only thing capable of generating everything or nothing at all. So it already is the perfect computer. And the universe, therefore, has no computational budget. It has an infinite computational budget. So there is no theoretically, according to this theory, optimum theory of everything, there is no smallest cell. There is no smallest square. You zoom in forever.
It's fractal,
and then the principles of relativity, Einstein take hold, that everything is relative to something else. So it's mind melting.
It really is.
When you start thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So from an energy perspective, though, how do you get around that? And it's a conversation that I've had.
Zero energy, because there's an equal amount of positive and negative energy. This is why it's so important.
I see. So it's fully balanced system.
Correct. Zero energy universe. I believe the term is ex nihilo. If you want to talk theology. Yeah. If you want to talk theology, right? A universe from nothing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the unified theory of everything that Optimum College, teaches, does that lead to a creation of the universe, or where does that go?
No. So it's very important for me to stress that you never have to agree with any of this. No one ever does.
Right. No. Well, that's why I love having guests like you on the show, because what I'm trying to do is understand it, right?
Yeah. I don't believe this universe. I do not believe this universe had a beginning in time. But more than that, I do not believe that time is fundamental to this universe. I believe time is derivative of. If you think of like what you held up that stopwatch, or like a wristwatch, you say this is time. No, it's not. That's a hand going around a dial. It's just a marker of time. What that is relative motion. Relative motion is fundamental. Time is not fundamental. Time is a human construct like taste or sound or color. Color isn't fundamentally real. It's just a wave pattern. Time is not fundamentally real. It's just our brain referencing two different safe states. So the universe is something like a blockchain. It does have a kind of memory to it. It's building on top of each other and optimizing. But I don't believe there was a beginning. I think it just.
Yeah, and I think you even seen that recently. People have said, well, the Big Bang was the beginning. And a lot of physicists have started to come out and say, no.
They're finding older and older galaxies.
Yeah, that was an event.
I believe they will find older and older galaxies forever. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I was one of the only people to predict those universe-breaking galaxies found by James Webb. I predicted it, I think it was over a year before that even came out. I was one of the only people. And I'll say it here. I think that it doesn't matter how big of a telescope we build. We will find galaxies further and further and further back forever.
So no end, no beginning.
Correct.
It is.
Yeah. Could all be nonsense. I could be completely wrong.
No, but we call that. It's
yeah.
actually, there's a mathematical term called tetrahedron, right? It's everything everywhere all at once. It is
Yes.
exponential in all directions,
Yes.
infinitely simultaneously, and that's a hard
Yes.
thing for us to understand because here we sit,
Yeah.
you know, on a planet. You know, we sit in this tiny little space, and we try to make everything relative to us, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Yes. And Jolie Artist, this philosopher I was talking about, she has a podcast. It's called My One Black Friend podcast. She is black, but she has said that it's really called that because this is black. This is dark philosophy. Like this is like Black Mirror philosophy.
Sure.
And she really deep dives this stuff. Like if this universe really is infinite and eternal and stuff, and it's an infinite fractal, what does this say about consciousness? She is so brilliant. Oh my God. I'll send you links to her.
Yeah, please. I'd love to talk to her. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Because I love these kind of conversations because I think they're the conversations that they're philosophical. I do believe, and coming from a very evangelical background, where you truly believe that you are in direct communication with the creator of the universe all the time, that there's a deconstruction process that has to happen from that point. And the farther away you get from it, the better the understanding of reality you can obtain, because you no longer need to be the center of attention. You know, at some point you can be the observer and you can say, you know what, it's pretty cool to sit on the sidelines. I don't have to be the quarterback, right? It's pretty cool to be a fan on the sidelines and just try to truly see the perspective and the picture of all of the players moving around. Right now, I'm not just seeing it through the two eye holes in my head, through the mask and the limited vision. I get to see it at a different level.
True. And that's why I like when Jesus said, "Ye are gods." I believe that. Right. See, that we are fractals of the God consciousness. This word God, and God is just a German word, right? God isn't God. You can't make an idol out of the word. The word is referring to something more powerful than that. It's referring to this infinite creative force that is personal and speaks to us. And I believe that does in those terms, that is real, and it's within all of us. We are gods. We are the universe come alive. We are the fractal consciousness of God.
I got to say something there that just dawned on me when you said that, and that is that the word God is an idol.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it technically is an idol. The fact that, if you think about the Hebrew Bible and about how God is so jealous of his own name, and the Hebrews won't even pronounce it. They're not even permitted. Jews
Yahweh, the tetragram.
Yeah, right. The tetragram, but they're not allowed to pronounce. I have some rabbi friends. Oddly enough, one of the weird things about rabbis is a lot of people don't realize many of them are atheists.
Yes.
They actually believe in the tradition, but they actually are technically
most
atheists.
American Jews are atheists.
Yeah,
in my experience.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's a very common thing. But I think what is interesting is that just the pronunciation can destroy the universe when you really get into the older, Kabbalistic documents.
You couldn't even speak it. See, now if this equation is true, you can't actually simulate the optimum theory of everything equation. If this equation is true, you cannot actually perfectly simulate. We do have simulations of it, but they are rudimentary. They're like pixelated, and because we do not have an infinite computer, we can only create this pixelated simulation of it. So in a way, if that's true, it's true that you can't say God's name. If God's name is the equation, you can't speak it. Only the infinite can speak it.
And technically, even using the word is an idol because it isn't it, right?
Yeah.
Just bringing it down to the word is the idol itself.
Yeah,
which is really sort of fascinating.
God said so many names. Elohim, Jehovah.
Well, Elohim is such a fascinating, and because I actually, grew up around this, and I learned a lot about this, and we had to learn.
Yeah, I did too. I'm from a Judeo-Christian.
Yeah. I mean, one Elohim is really interesting because in Hebrew it's a uniplural noun. It means one but many. And this is why you even get a lot of the myths of things like Prometheus, where, it says God created man. It doesn't actually say that was a single God. It literally says like we
Yes,
created man.
I know.
We showed up and we did it, not I did it.
Uh-huh.
And it's really
Genesis
interesting
is
because
wild.
that word is not used very frequently, the Elohim word, because it's a little controversial when you really get into the Hebrew and you're like, look, this is talking about like
Let's
it
create
usually
them in
defines
our
a
image.
race.
Yep.
Yeah, it defines like a race or like a, almost like a human. It's defining a race or a category, a class of individuals that perform this action. There's a lot of things and I do believe, I had an opportunity years ago to do some work with the Claremont colleges and particularly their theological seminary. And there was a lot of interesting things when you really get into what many of these scriptures, and I'm not just talking about Christian, I'm talking about Icelandic sagas and, the Hindus. And there's some very interesting things in there. And I think we tend to, as human beings today, because content is so easy to get, we tend to read those things like they're content when we really should read them like they are literature. And what I mean by that is if you've ever, and I'm starting to experiment with this with my own writing, where I take a paragraph and I say, okay, now I need to make it into a haiku. So I need to break it. Like now I need to make it into a full chapter, this paragraph. Now I want to change the audience and fooling with the words, fooling with the phraseology, moving commas in weird positions to see if it changes what is being said. And technically, if you really get into the old scriptures, these old writings, that's exactly what's happening. There's one in the Hebrew that's very interesting. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And there's a comma there. It's the only comma in the whole Torah, if I remember correctly. And interestingly, commas at that time meant stop, pause for a long period of time.
I saw something about this. I didn't deep dive it a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, a comma means stop and pause. Because a long period of time passes between this and the next event.
Yeah,
so it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Stop and hold on, because so much time went by that you can't even imagine it.
I'm not even religious, and I love this stuff.
Yeah, I do too, because if you think about it, they didn't have Facebook to distract them. So what if you truly were a great mind in your time and you were writing something, you spent
you
spent years on that. I mean, do you really think that Poe or any of these guys sat down and just jotted it out on a computer in 30 minutes and pushed it out to a meme farm?
No, it was like their life work.
It was their life work to write one book. So every word is so deliberate, and every I love. There should be a study just about the first sentences in novels, because so many times that first sentence tells you the whole story. Yeah. And the rest is just the depth. It's like, that's the headline. If you think about it like a newspaper, that first line is the headline. It tells you everything you need to know, but you got to read the next 500 pages to truly comprehend exactly what was in that phrase. And I love that. I think AI is going to change this. I've said this a couple times recently. I don't believe I'd said it on any of my shows, but I believe that we are entering an age of literature where ChatGPT, all of these things can produce vast amounts of very, very good persuasive content. I don't believe it can ever create literature. And literature is deep thinking about every word and every phrase and the sentence structure. And
you might be right.
Yeah, I hope. And I hope that
even if it does, it's like you could play a computer in chess, but you'd rather play a person. Right. I would rather read a book written by a person. I'd rather hear a song composed by a person.
Yeah. There's something to that. And I think it was interesting last night when I had some friends over here, we talked about this and we said, that if we do reach a point of singularity, there is going to come some point where we as a human species decide to unplug certain aspects of it. Maybe it figures out how to automate our world and let us live to be 200 years old, and that we don't have to work anymore, and that the planet is safe, and that
unplug certain aspects
unplug certain aspects of AI and say, you know what? Let's leave these three things for us. Let's stop. Let's let literature, music. Let's leave some things for us in the end. And I think, unfortunately, we can't even have an ethical conversation about that until it does all the other things. It has to automate our lives to the point where at some point we say,
"Oh yeah. What kind of future would you like to exist 10 years from now?"
Oh my God. Listen, the funny thing is the thing that everybody's fighting against in AI is what everybody actually considers paradise. And that is that work is not a mandatory thing, right? That we have more time to spend with our family and friends
Yes,
and on the things that we're interested in.
exactly.
And it's like horses, for thousands of years, everybody had a horse because you had to have a horse.
Oh, I
Well, now
love
today,
that when you put that in there
yeah.
about they actually fought against. I didn't know that.
They fought against the horses. Yeah, the firemen. If you haven't read the book, check it out. The first, right at the beginning, I tell this story about how firemen in New York City actually went on strike and were like, "How dare you try to bring horses in to take these wagons? Our job is to drag these wagons through the streets."
Right.
But if you think about what happened 50 years later, is everybody had a horse. Well, now today, I know people that have horses. They're all rich people.
Yeah.
poor people don't have horses anymore. It's interesting how those things that are so common at one point become very elitist at some other point when it is no longer
lobster.
necessary. Yeah, lobster's a great example, right? I mean, that was fed to prison. It was like the prison swill was lobster, and now today it's like on the platter.
Yeah.
I love how that works. And that's my hope for humanity in the future is I hope that we can solve some of these big problems. I hope that people will look back. Listen, there's no other time I'd ever want to live. Like this
we
is
are
the
living.
time.
It is. Isn't it strange that we were born at this place in time when
really
we are
is.
on the cusp of creating our own reality? It's like creating the loop of simulations. Elon would say, "We're going to make the simulation." Maybe we will, and we are. If we do, we are living at that time now. It's so bizarre.
This would be the spawn point. Think about it. If we are in a
so
simulation,
bizarre.
1970s to 1970s to about 93 or 94. That's the spawn point. Like I don't know if I'd want to spawn earlier. And I know we're getting very theoretical for anybody that's listening that we've lost already. Essentially, in games, you spawn in a certain position in a certain, the game. But if you think about time as when other time in history, what is there another time in history you'd like to live? And I think this is the one. Now, listen, I think 100 years from now, our healthcare will have evolved to a point that we can live much, much, much longer. That would be nice too. But I think being at the convergence point between being a modern society and a historically sort of, I don't even want to use the word dark ages, but almost like that. I think 100 years from now, 500 years from now, people will look back and say, 19 something or 2000 was this sort of break point where it's a modern era occurred in this time. And I heard yesterday they were saying that
a new enlightenment. We could be on the cusp of a new enlightenment right now.
Which, if that's the case, I want to be sitting around a campfire with a bunch of friends, philosophizing.
Get the technology out of the way. See, I like this idea of technology gets out of the way, becomes invisible. It allows just get out of the way. Get out of the way, technology. Give us the resource, time to spend with our friends and family.
And this automation piece,
world.
Yeah, please. Right. I mean, think about how we've already gotten there. When is the last time you tended the fire to keep your family warm at night? We don't.
Yeah, you're right. It's become a luxury. Sitting around the fire has become a luxury. It's gone from being Right. But I will tell you, at our cabin that we had for years, one of the funnest things was to get up in the middle of the night and have to tend the fire. Like it was like a privilege of wealth to be able to go and tend the fire in the middle of the night. And every time I would do it, I would think, for tens of thousands of years, everyone went, "You son of a bitch," in fire and got out of bed and crawled over there. Yeah. My parents owned a summer camp, and it was a lot of that. Like campfires and just hanging out and enjoying each other's company, playing sports. Sports will survive the singularity.
Yeah,
and those are my favorite memories. Those are some of my favorite memories. It's just, the technology is just a tool. It's a tool to get us to this point where we can be more human.
Well, and I think too, the more that we understand about things like human taste, imagine how much better food will be, 10 or 15 years from now, once we understand and it gets dialed into your palate, right? And like just that kind of stuff to me is
AI
like,
will figure it out.
Oh my God. And won't it? I mean, let's be honest. That's what it'll do. It will, because it's data extrapolation, you could technically give a test right today and say, what do you think of this flavor? What do you think of this flavor? And maybe do that with 200 or 300 flavors and create a flavor profile that is very specific to you, to the taste. I mean, Jordan Peterson has said,
Yes.
what's going to destroy us is the porn that will be coming out in the next 5 or 10 years, because it'll be specific to every little nuance. You know, that woman will look slightly like the girl in 8th grade that you were really attracted to. You know what I'm saying? Like, it will go that far. And I don't think that's a bad
as an adult.
As an adult, right? It will make it adultified, right? But I'm just saying it'll be able to look at what our preferences are. It will be able to look at those very specific things and say, there's a reason behind that. And I can extrapolate where you want to go next. This is why I think that we will get a cure to cancer, because I've already talked to some researchers that are like, hey, look, we're putting research data into some of these AIs, and it's predicting patent dates into the future of new medicines and new, protein folding methods.
Totally, and I mean, behind the scenes, there's some version of GPT that we don't even know about that is insane. Yeah. Like, it's just trained on everything.
The version we are seeing is baby steps.
Baby steps. They've got a version behind the scenes that is doing all this. It is cranking out 10,000 patents a second.
I mean, it's true. And listen, I had Kevin Myers on here a few weeks ago from AI Advertising. This is a 7-year-old ad agency that's been using AI for the last 7 years to predict all this kind of stuff. Like, ChatGPT to them is like, there's this too, right? I mean, the problem was before is the accessibility, right? It was a very elitist kind of thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I really don't. I think, yes, there's some danger on the horizon. Yes, we have to be considerate. You've probably seen my analogy about fire. I'm like, look, nobody's trying to get fire out of their house. No, there's not an old cave woman standing at the front of your house going, you kids aren't bringing that damn fire into here to heat our food. And, no, we've adopted these technologies and we've created fire departments and fire extinguishers and all the things to surround it to make sure that we stay safe. But there's nobody out there that's like, this, we got to get electricity out of our house, other than the brother on Better Call Saul, right? I mean, we all want these things because they help us. And AI, I believe, has the potential to do that. Now, I do believe, and I think there's probably some limit, right, that we can reach of all the knowledge, maybe all the knowledge we could potentially know, or maybe some point that we start to say, this maybe wasn't a good thing. But imagine where we'll be at that point. Imagine how far we have to go before we actually look back at it and say, maybe we went a little too far. I'm very hopeful for the future.
Me too. I'm an optimist. We call our graduates certified optimists. It's a single degree. It's a certified. You become a certified optimist.
I love it.
And better than being a pessimist.
It sure is. Well, Garry, listen, we've talked for 75 minutes. I knew it would happen. But tell people how they find out more about you and about Optimum College.
Sure. It's www.optimum.college.
Okay.
And that's it.
That's great. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being here. This was a great
Derrick,
conversation.
Thank you so much. You're the man. You're the boss, sir.
I appreciate you. And stick around for a couple minutes here, Garry, but I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out, hey, we've talked about the book. You might as well go buy one of those things, right?
Go buy it. Phenomenal.
Thank you, Garry. And thank you all for joining us on another edition of the Convergence. All right. What a great conversation with Garry. Check out optimum.college. Follow Garry on TikTok. Look at the movement he is making. Listen, again, I like to bring guests on this show sometimes that say things that might not completely align with your worldview. That's okay. I learned early on, and we probably all have learned this lesson, that if you're eating a piece of meat, you can spit the bones out. Find the parts that you can digest. Find the parts that you can integrate. Find the parts that challenge the way that you think about the world. And let the other ideas lay on the side and say, maybe I'm not into this, but I understand where this person's coming from and I accept these parts of their ideas. Many times in our society, we get pigeonholed into camps. Here in the US, it's Republican and Democrat. And I either am all in on one or all in on the other. But really the people that are the great thinkers, the great minds, are those that are sitting in the middle and listening to both sides and taking out all the good stuff and filtering out the things that don't make sense to them at that time. They're not even dismissing those ideas. They're just saying, right now, I can't integrate that into my worldview, but I can understand what it is. I can see the perspective, and I'll leave it lay over here and see if it's something that fits the puzzle pieces of my life in the future. Thanks again for turning into the Convergence with Derrick Maines. I'm excited on the new direction of the show, and we have seen a considerable increase in the number of downloads, views, follows, subscribes, all those kind of things. We're pivoting. We've started in the Web3 space. We've moved heavily into the AI space. And in the last few weeks, as you've probably seen, we're moving towards more philosophical and ethical concerns around technology. Over the coming months, we're going to focus more on ideas, less on people, less on companies, less on events, and more on ideas, because ideas change the world. And there are ideas out there that might just be big enough that they can change everything. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Convergence. If you want more information about the topics you've heard here today, reach out to us at theconvergencepodcast.com.